Do it.
Good afternoon and welcome to the May 1st City of Coos Bay Parks Commission work session. We will step on down to public comment. Coco? Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Coco Sutton, and I'm a volunteer with the City of Coos Bay Parks, I live at 3800 Virginia Avenue in Coos Bay, Oregon. I wanted to make a comment on the Veterans Memorial Cross since that's over 50 years old. I did give Greg the information for the review personnel at State Historic Preservation Office so that you have that documentation and review information before you do anything. So it won't hold anything up because we have the grants coming in on the restrooms. And that also, anytime we're doing these things, allowing some public comment periods so that it doesn't sour people on fundraising for other things. We were very successful with the first 13 John Toppet's items that were donated, and there was no expectation of notations on them as to who did what. We're doing photos with them and putting them in news things. And I think moving forward, that might be a good way to do things. So I also wanted to remind this body that for the first time since the Mayfly Festival has been around, Commissioner Faraday and myself and 2 other volunteers so far are going to be doing the I'm a Raindrop in Mingus Park. And we have some stations set up and a QR code for a trail walk that will start at the Mingus Park Community Building. We have a wonderful map that was made by the City of Coos Bay showing 7, I believe, streams and things that come in starting at that top historic reach there and end up eventually in the bay and the ocean. So that way we'd be able to get information on how much the city staff has to pay attention to that watershed for culverts, road maintenance, things like that. So if anyone here would like to sign up for even an hour, I'd appreciate letting me or Jamie know, but we're going to run through volunteer trainings on the 3rd and the 10th. It's pretty easy, but we do have a trail map and a QR code we can send you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then Cricket?
Cricket Souls at 62170 Ross Inlet in Coos Bay. So we've had some positive things. On Earth Day, we planted an Artemis moon tree, which is pretty hard to get one, it seems. And so those seeds were flown 25 times around the moon. And I worked with the 7th grade classes, and they will now become the stewards of the Artemis tree. And they will also be watching over the moon tree that we planted last year. I borrowed the plaque to the city hall and I meant to stick in the car. So we'll have that back. And they were fascinated also by shoes that were designed by Nike that honored Apollo 14. So that was a good thing. We have OBAB has gone through some growing pains, and some new people came to look out what was going to be done on May 10th. So along the roadway, we were hoping we could just do edges. You know, we're not going to have them crawling up in the brush or anything like that. They thought that was too much, but when we went into the cemetery, they didn't think there was enough because they never actually walked into the cemetery. And we're really trying hard to eliminate all that ivy. And so we got to keep after it for a few more years. So they bailed out on that and don't know if they'll come back again. And they just didn't feel very comfortable working in the cemetery. So we'll run a student project for after school on Friday when they have half day. So on the 9th, we'll have kids out there, whatever we get. And that'll be ones that need community service hours and detention makeups as well. And so we'll do that. And then on Saturday, May 10th, we have a work day scheduled after the Mingus or after the OBAB work day. And that'll be from 1 to 3. And we'll see what we get for volunteers. And we're doing that in partnership with Solve. Solve has partnered for the last 2 years since COVID with the Oregon Heritage Commission and the historic cemeteries to do these work days all around the county. So they all qualify in this kind of historic cemetery work day anytime during April and May. So we feel it's really important to partner with them on those kinds of things. So that will be our next thing there. My Becky Souls has submitted 2 grants. will listen in on May 25th to see the result of a Marshfield Pioneer or the Historic Cemetery grant. And then later in the month, or the beginning of the next month will be a Preserving Oregon grant. And we'll see what we can do there. But we still are in need of the small crowdfunding type things, like if you went to Marshfield, either 4 hours of service or $4 for each year that you attended there. So we're working on that. And then we will have our program on May 22nd that's open to the public, and it'll be in the morning, Thursday morning at school. We ask people to be seated by 10:30, and it honors all the veterans, active service members, but in particular, it recognizes the 13 young men who died in Vietnam that went to some of the CBD 9 schools, whether it was Marshfield or Coos River. So that's sort of our things coming up. Some of them have more direct with the parks, but they all sort of include, because Memorial Day certainly has our greatest visitation for the year.
Perfect.
So.
And then, do you have like a flyer that we could do for the, because there's several reunions, class reunions coming up this year, I've seen on Facebook.
Well, I reached out to the ones last year,
Yeah.
and you know, got a $4, $8 here and there, but it was kind of not very, didn't seem like I was getting to the right person always. So, but I will keep reaching out for those and keep publicizing it. And we have flyers out and QR codes that you can tie into and see what's going on. So
Perfect.
we'll keep trying.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought of that because I saw several of them
Yeah,
popping up.
yeah, we do reach out to them, and we do have one that's planned for the last 2 months that they will be taking a tour and a work day of the cemetery in August. So they got right on top of things, and so there'll be some people coming for sure, but that's not till August 9th. So we're going to see what we can do, and always looking for anyone that can take little flyers or post a flyer somewhere that can help get, especially for our work days, since we're kind of hurting now to get it ready for Memorial Day.
Yeah.
So,
Well, perfect.
okay.
Thank you so much. We're moving on down to item 3A, Mingus Park Memorial Discussion. Greg?
So the city of Coos Bay has memorial benches and markers located throughout the park. The purpose of today's discussion is just going to talk about some of these memorials, more specifically in preparation of the upcoming LGGP grant, restrooms, placement of the prefabricated restroom. The location of that restroom is going to be in the footprint of the Vietnam Memorial Cross that is in the park. That's going to have to be relocated to facilitate that installation. When I talked with Ariane about this meeting, she would like to expand the memorial discussion to kind of talk about all of the memorials in the park. So attached to the staff report is the Mingus Park Master Plan draft that was established in June of 2024. And in there, right around page 41, 42-ish is the start of where we've identified the markers that are inside of Mingus Park. Some of them are associated with benches, some of them are in the ground, some of them may have historically been next to a tree. The tree may have fallen down or come down. I don't have the history of all of the placards that are or memorials that are there, but we do have several that are just in the ground there without anything around it. So for us, it's kind of a challenge to mow and maintain the grass. If it gets a little bit taller, we might not know that it's there. So it might damage some equipment, or we may damage the memorial. We're pretty good about knowing where everything is at. We pay attention, but the chances are there. And I know that we don't allow memorials to be placed by trees anymore. We don't allow memorials to be placed by themselves anymore in the park. And so anyways, that was the basis of this discussion. And so with that, staff does have a need to relocate that cross. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the commission to kind of talk about memorials, what the vision is of the commission, and what they would like to see.
So what we had discussed, not with this master plan, but the several prior, the 2010.
2013.
2013 master plan is having potentially some of those memorials that are now freestanding relocated into one location or somewhere so that there is not this mowing obstacle. Of course, if a memorial is associated with a bench or it's on a rock or a gazebo or something, that's something different. That's an element. But we've had a number of trees over the years that have been removed. I know some of the ones that used to go out over the pond, those had memorials associated with them. Those trees are long gone. It's part of the issue with having the memorials that are just freestanding scattered around the park is people want new ones. They want to put more out there, and explaining that that's not what we do anymore is sometimes problematic. So thinking of trying to find a way that is showing care, but also allows us to prevent this from happening again. And also aid in the maintenance that we have of the park is something that I think is important to tackle, since we are having a well-publicized move of a memorial. This can be an opportunity to kind of clean up all the memorials in the park. You're next in line.
I'm next in line.
Left, so I'm just
Yeah.
gonna call on you.
There's 4.
Well-
Jimmy's online.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm the master plan did a wonderful job of locating all the memorials that are there. And so it's easy to right now to take a look at them. And when I went through and looked at it, it seems like, we've got different classes of memorials. We've got some that are, as Greg said, are in the ground that are for an individual, sponsored by a family or a spouse or a parent. And those are in the ground. Then we've got the benches, which all have plaques on them, which are a little bit different kind of memorial that's in there. And then we have some of the bigger memorials or plaques that are in there. Of course, the Vietnam Veterans one is one. There's one for the remodel of the Choshi Bridge. There's one there for the people that contributed to the Choshi Garden, for example. So we have, and some of these plaques are sponsored by organizations. The Vietnam Veterans one is by Western Bank, which is no longer around. The JCs have done some. There's one over at the ballpark that was done by a group. So it's kind of a mishmash, but those are maybe the 3 general categories to think about when we look at those. When I first came on the Parks Commission, someone had inquired about a memorial there. And that's one of the first questions I asked him. I was told by you all that we don't do them anymore, and I totally understand that. And so I get that. So the questions that I have when I started thinking about it is, and I think I know the answer in one of them already, because Greg already said I have no idea why these are here, whether or not we're bound by any other prior agreements that went in there. Did we agree to do X? And is that an issue for us? And then I think when we get to moving any kind of memorial, I think we need to make a good faith effort. If it's a personal one for a person, and there are some that are in there, we need to make a good faith effort to try to contact the people that originally donated that, or the family members that are still around that donated that, to let them know about whatever we end up deciding. And then some of the ones, like Coco, I think had mentioned, my hearing's not as good anymore, but she can correct me, that the one like the Vietnam Memorial one is a little bit more of a significant one. And that one does need, I think, some public comment saying, because of the rearranging of the park, we're moving the memorial, and make sure that they have an opportunity to kind of talk about where they think they may want it. And then finally, when I got through reading this thing, once we figure out what we're doing with the ones that we currently have, I hope we consider some kind of way, and I'm not saying put in plaques or memorials, but that people want to donate something to Mingus Park or whatever park, that there's some way of recognizing them. I don't know if there's going to be individual donations to the community building, for example, if they can have a big plaque on the wall that you often do for donations. You know, if that's something they want to consider or not, or the Parks Commission wants to consider or not. But, you know, or whether we allow people to plant trees without memorials or other bushes. So, you know, I think there's some things to think about. I told the other gentleman at the end of the table, and I will tell you, and it's just a little thing. The Vietnam one is okay to say the men that died in the Vietnam. Women died in the Vietnam War too. 8 US women military personnel died. 59 US women that were contracted by the US government died in Vietnam. Some of the women got Purple Hearts. There was a woman that got a Bronze Star. And I know times have changed. So I just throw that out there as well for whatever it's worth. My personal opinion is, and then I have a question about the benches. So someone donates a bench and they put it out there. Some of them are made out of material that may never be fall apart, but maybe some are. And what happens when they fall apart too? So
part of the discussion goes back to when an element disintegrates, like a bench, which is why the memorial benches are easier in a sense, then that element no longer exists. So then it fades into oblivion. But there are different rules and we can have different guidelines for each thing. Because benches can be sponsored in memorial or sponsored by JCs or, you know, these different groups for elements that are needed. Part of the reason why we really rehashed and started the 2013 master plan was because we had this hodgepodge of things just showing up essentially in the parks. And so by having kind of some more guidelines on what we wanted and having a kit of parts to say, okay, somebody wants to do a bench, here's 3 locations where benches are needed, pick one of those, and here's the bench that you get, and here's the plaque, and you pick what's on it. So that there's a system to doing this. And then potentially a system for, okay, here's the 8 locations where we know that we need trees. You can plant the tree, but there's no plaque, you know, so there's parts and pieces to that. And this could be a time where we revisit our policies and procedures for the parks on how we handle those items. I think as we move forward, you know, if somebody's donating, like if we got a donation and they pay for the whole bathrooms, that makes sense having a plaque. But for the parts and pieces and the things, I love Coco's idea of let's publicize it. Let's get a photo in the paper, but we don't necessarily need to have a running billboard of everybody's names. Many of the people are doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it because it's an important project. They don't necessarily need a plaque that then exists forever. Now, if somebody wants to give us $500,000, we could revisit that. But that's something as well.
So Erin, is that a written policy that we have?
It's not, it's something that we've discussed as we were doing the last master plan and then this current one. And then with something that we've been busy with other things and other emergencies and we haven't gotten back to it. The last time we discussed it is when we discussed the Vietnam Memorial Cross due to a large uproar of whether or not it should remain in the park. And so then that kind of died back down and we've been putting out other fires. But when it was discussed that it needs to be relocated, I thought this would be a good opportunity to discuss all the memorials in the park and kind of maybe have a system in place, you know, have it be a ceremonial moving, if that's what we decide to do, of some of those memorials so that we can we can do it together. So it has some sort of significance instead of us just ripping it out of the ground and putting it somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it would be a great idea to reduce whatever that policy becomes to writing so that everybody has a clear understanding and you can point to something. And, you know, one commissioner like me that may not know what's going on, say one thing and so another commissioner may say another because they didn't hear a particular thing. So
And the
I
big
think
part
that
is that people see the memorials in the park, so they assume that they can continue and do it again. So if we can modify that, that would be great. Jamie, you've had your hand up.
yeah,
Yeah. So the memorial plaques are no longer accepted. When did we decide that? When did the parks decide that? Ish.
Yeah, so for the ones, just the random ones in the ground, like 2013.
Okay. And does the parks typically maintain the donated benches that do have a plaque on who donated them?
Yeah, we'll typically maintain them as best as we can. Some of the benches are pretty old. Parts and materials are no longer available for that style of bench or whatever the situation may be. For example, I think there's a bench up close to Choshi Gardens where the plaque has been defaced via vandalism. The last time I was up in that area, well, not the last time, several months ago when I was up there, I noticed it was defaced. I asked staff to go ahead and just reach out to order a similar plaque, name placard that looked very similar to it, and just replace it with the same verbiage that was on it. Just because there's a plaque there, it gets damaged by somebody doesn't mean that it should stay defaced. In my opinion, I think that somebody cared enough to donate that bench. I think we should maintain it the best we can. But yeah, some of these benches are some of the memorials, I think if they are ever lost for some reason, are probably not going to be replaced. But if it's something that we can easily do, I don't see any reason why we couldn't easily make a repair, just because the family members, loved ones, the community, whoever donated it, went to that effort to recognize that person.
Okay. So I could see where as future useful items like benches being donated with plaques, of course, doesn't cost the parks much of anything other than installation. And then if they know at the get-go that that bench will be there and maintained, but perhaps the plaque itself, if it gets defaced, would be the plaque donator's responsibility to replace if desired, or if they're even in the community anymore. Perhaps that's a suggestion for reducing the responsibility of the parks in this regard. Just a thought.
I don't disagree with anything I've heard at all. I do think on the Vietnam Memorial that public comment I think is warranted for something that significant. So I would certainly echo the need to do that. I do like the concept that I just heard on the replacement of the plaques that might get defaced, of placing that responsibility with the beholder of the plaque for a couple of reasons. One, they may want to redefine or restate what's there, and this provides an opportunity to do that as well. I don't know what you do about those, for example, though, or that come from folks that are we can no longer contact. That's a little bit tougher, but I do like the idea of maybe putting that responsibility back and giving them, again, it's not just a responsibility, but really opportunity. They may want to rephrase or redo what's on that original plaque.
Because as mentioned before, times change.
What was that?
As mentioned before, times change. So it looks like it's for the in memory of an individual. The last plaque was placed about 2005-ish.
I was gonna say, looking through this, I was very surprised at how many memorials there are. I genuinely did a double take. I'm like, I'm not that tired. I can like, what's going on here? And I appreciate what Kurt said about the variety of memorials and I think developing, I know we're not gonna do, more, but if we were to, I think having a standard situation would be good. And as we talk about moving some of them, some of these do have, almost like a grave marker aesthetic to them, which that took me back for a second. I was like, oh, this is because of something else. Considering if we relocate them, how we do so it doesn't match that similar
Yeah.
aesthetic.
One of the suggestions for the last time when we had this discussion was like a garden wall. So something that was a wall that had some history of the park, some memory placards, and then also had some vibrancy with some plantings or things like that.
I like that idea, especially if you took some of those ones that are laying down, put them up, and then that removes the onus of the maintenance from having to worry about, damaging their equipment, damaging the memorial. And that can maybe make it kind of a cool, because they are going to be very different as, again, times change, right? But there's different aesthetics. And that might make it a really interesting art piece in a way too, and incorporate some flora and everything else in there. I think that would be really neat. But then again, I'm an art history guy, so that's my wheelhouse. The other thing with the Vietnam Memorial, I really do want to echo the sentiment of having a public commentary set, space, because I think that's really going to be important. I think that'll, a lot of people have a lot of thoughts to say, but I just want to make sure. I mean, I was thinking about where would I put it? I was like, let's not put it near the Chosi area, because like different aesthetics, again, different, cross with Shinto. There's a lot going on with that. I'm sure that's not even been considered, but I just want to make sure on the record that I'm like, hey, let's not put those together. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting conversation.
So,
Okay, Jamie.
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Jamie, you had your hand up again?
Yes. Has there been a suggested, maybe Greg, you might have a suggested area to put the Vietnam Memorial, either as an interim while construction happens or placement of the bathroom, or is there a likely spot nearby that it would likely go? And then we would have a suggestion before we went out to the public, say, this is where we're going to place it. And then not have to get 60 suggestions that may or may not be useful.
That was going to be my next question to the commission was, I know with public comment, whenever you throw public comment out there, you might get 65 or 70 different locations. Do we want to narrow this down to maybe three locations? And one thing I would like to add is staff has suggested a location near the flag, the American flag that's been put up in 2020 or 2018. I think it was put in at Mingus Park by an Eagle Scout they put in there as his Eagle badge requirement. That was one location that was floated by staff. I think that could be a viable location. Maybe another location, maybe up on the hill up by the pool, could be another location. Perhaps another location that I haven't even thought about. But one thing I would like to also mention is that there has been discussions previously with the American Legion, Kevin
Owens.
Yeah, I was going to say Kevin Davies. He's the guy from Comfort Flow. Sorry, too many Kevins. Kevin Owens and another person about maybe trying to create a centralized veterans memorial in town. We have the Purple Heart Memorial down at the Visitors Information Center parking lot, and they'd like to do another memorial. And I was thinking maybe we could relocate this memorial to that and just have it get to this memorial area. But that hasn't been finalized either. And so that iron is still in the fire, but I don't know where we're at with that. So it could be, we place it as temporarily in a location in the park, and then maybe perhaps in the future move it into this veterans area or leave it in the park at a location permanently. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I just wanted to bring that up. So, I mean, staff has already talked about a couple of locations that they think would be ideal, but that was the reason why I wanted to bring it to the commission, because that's just couple of thoughts. What does the commission think? I would, if we're gonna go out for public comment, I would like to identify some locations so that we can get public comment, say A, B, C, D, not A through double Z,
Right.
locations.
I mean, I love the idea of the centralized Veterans Memorial. Cricket I think a small freak out one time when we initially had this conversation because someone presented the idea of removing all the plaques from Mingus Park and putting them in the
And the
cemetery.
No,
Yeah, I don't think
And I think
that's-
that's when that last conversation ended.
right. And, you know, there was a lot of other stuff going on when the plaque came up and the group from Wisconsin came and
Yeah.
sort of had protests. But what I did, two things I wanted to think about. This is the 50th anniversary of the ending of the Vietnam War. So it's a very sensitive time to a lot of the Vietnam people, whether they served or had friends or relatives serve. So that's something to keep in mind that it's very important to them. The other thing is that maybe you're not aware of is through the Oregon Heritage, there is a Veterans and War Memorial grant. So their deadline, you know, we think it'll still be funded. Most of them are funded from lottery dollars, but not all of them. So it might be something worth looking at. And it may be a little while, but you might want to take a little while to decide. And putting those things together, I know the Garden Club would like to put in another Gold Star marker somewhere, so they would be willing to partner with you. And the Blue Star marker is on the wall at the visitor center with no plants around it, and it's not a very, you know, presentable thing. So it may be, as you take time to think, maybe pointing out that potentially you would apply for a grant to help do this. I know Bandon did quite a big arrangement, and that was partly funded in a grant. And when we restored the one for the Civil War, that was funded through one of the ORPD grants. So you might want to look at that and let people, and not make the rash, you know, maybe we have a temporary place for this year that's special to people, and then have bigger plans.
You're good. You really are good. Greg, timeline, I mean, as far as your construction and the bathrooms and stuff are concerned, what kind of timeline are you looking where this has to be moved? I'm kind of liking the idea of certainly not go out for 60 different places, but I'm kind of liking the idea of just announcing that we're temporarily moving it because of the construction, and before we make a decision where it's to be permanently placed, and just kind of go out with an announcement like that. But what's your timeline for the bathrooms?
So timelines for the restrooms is gonna be, we'll be pouring the slab towards the end of this year. We're ordering the restroom, depending on what manufacturer we go with. It can range anywhere from 6 to 10 months before we get it delivered. And that's a prefabbed restroom. So it's just come in, be placed, and then probably operational that day. Anywhere from 6 to 10 months. From probably in the next month, probably 7 to 11 months.
I really like the idea of having, I don't, did I overstep? Were you say something, Kurt? Okay, I really like the idea of coming up with, like you said, 4 or 5 suggested spots,
3.
or 3, yeah.
Never give them more than 3.
My brain thinks in 5, so yeah. So, okay, so 3, you know, select spots as opposed to, like, yeah, A through doubles, you know, whatever, lap the alphabet around again. I think that'll really help focus the conversation. And I think having a set idea would be good for all of us. And then that centralizing of, so my little hometown, they did, back in Minnesota, did a centralized memorial for all of the veterans throughout all the wars. And it's been a really nice setup, and it really rejuvenated a part of the park that I never would have even thought was like it literally was out in center field, like quite literally behind the baseball field. And that really gave a nice like spark to that area. So having that centralized space, I think, is a really beneficial idea. Something to consider.
Yeah, one of the things I just picked up though is it may not necessarily be City Park where it's located.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on where they, I mean, I really like the idea of a centralized location. You could do the Blue Star, the Gold Star, the Memorial, the Purple Heart, like bringing all of that into one inclusive space that's honoring and is beautification, because most of these memorials that we have are just plastered on something.
Right.
So I think that there's an opportunity that honors our veterans and the people that were affected by the war in one centralized location. I like the idea of saying, hey, we got to move it because of the bathrooms, but this is the plan is for something that's honorable. So whether the location is moved temporarily or not. The problem with a temporary location, even if you tell people it's temporary, is it's never really temporary, because then people get really pissy when you do something about it. So the fact that even if we have 6 months, maybe getting poke Kevin a little bit and see if they can come up with some generalized plans. And even if it's maybe it gets placed somewhere protected for a few months, and then we can have the great reveal at this new location next spring or wherever that happens. I think that would be a really, really good approach. Concerned, of course, moving it multiple times makes me really concerned. I would, if we know that we're going to move forward with the memorial generalized location with American Legion, then I think I would be actually think that it should go somewhere that's secure, and then it could be placed in that location there. I just worry about it moving in multiple times in multiple locations.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. And that's one reason I asked for a timeline. It sounds like we have a little bit of time here. It's not something that needs to be done right away. Excuse me for my ignorance, but Cricket, is there a particular month or day that the anniversary is scheduled for the Vietnam War?
Well, it's right now, so we're missing that. And then the welcome of Vietnam veterans would be the end of March, so we missed that one as well. But I think it would be, it's just something to consider, because even though we have that with Memorial Day coming up, we could actually, if you could think of something like you're doing, you could let people know it's sort of a soft opening, a soft acknowledgement that we're gonna do this. And that monument may not, was a person that just built it on his own. It was not built with any public support. He just went over one night and built it.
Yeah, and there's also the concern that it might not be able to move.
Right.
Yeah.
The takeaway is for anyone that's been up to the Mingus Park cabin when we remove the stairs. When somebody is making something, I don't believe that's marble or granite. It looks like an aggregate product.
I think it's concrete.
Yeah, and when you start moving concrete and you don't know how the structure was formed, you run the risk of damaging it.
Oh, absolutely.
And then it's a question of who's on the hook to repair it.
So the plaque that's on it is from Western Bank.
JC's analyst.
Yeah, but you guys are saying a private individual actually made it,
Yeah.
but Western Bank sponsored them?
Well, that's what you used to do in the park. I mean, like, the guys built the original playground equipment. They went down and built it.
They went what?
They just went down and built it. Like, a couple of the community
Okay.
members came up with money and they just went and
And I don't,
built it.
I don't think the plaque was necessarily there when they built it. There were before, but I don't think that.
It says donated by Western Bank, but maybe it was just the plaque they're donating.
There's an article online concerning what you have when the threat came. on
Yeah.
Thing, and it was that back in the day, the JCs, which is the back in the day, the Junior Chamber of Commerce had projects much like Scouts have an Eagle Star or Eagle Scout project. And so they would get sponsors to help them get the components, get the placement, and find a place to do that. And that's what that was. And then we've had controversies that occurred after the fact. So it's all online.
And there was some controversy before when there was consideration about, you had said whether, I kind of remember it vaguely, whether it should be in the park or not in the park in the whole 9 yards. And the argument for not I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the mood of the community now as opposed to when that all went on.
Well, clearly it's still there. And I think that there, because of the 50th anniversary, because we are losing rapidly any of our World War II vets, because of all of the stuff that is happening and the turmoil that is occurring right now in the world, I think this is at the forefront of everyone's mind, which is why I think, and I mean, I could talk to Kevin and we could talk further about, I think having some sort of honoring location where, like the Patriot Riders could start their rides from, that, when they have, when there's a member of the fallen, like we can have memorials there or things like that. I think having a point that is much more honoring than what we have now would be really important to the community. Yeah, and Harv, going back to what you're saying, that may or may not be at the park. I don't think that Mingus Park necessarily is like the right location for that. I think somewhere along the 101 corridor that's a little bit more visible. I think that would be a better location, and that's something that we can explore further.
Myrtle Point has a Veterans Memorial right in the corner of their park, the main street, that lists names of veterans that were killed in service. And I think it's in more than one war too, but it's actually in their park, not too far from the skate park.
Yeah, this veterans area would be incorporating veterans and memorialize the fallen from all wars, for members of the service from our area. And I believe that the location that was discussed was the backside of the Firemen's Memorial, on this side of the Firemen's Memorial, facing City Hall. One of the big discussion items that we had was the Purple Heart Memorial down on the 101, is that nobody knows it's there. People drive
Right.
by,
Yeah.
nobody stops unless you stop in that parking lot, or if you know exactly where it is. Doesn't garner a lot of visitors, and nobody stops and says, "Oh, what is that?" And I think having it someplace centrally located so people could see it walking around, maybe a highlight during the farmers market or the Bay Area Fun Festival, the Blackberry Arts Festival, or any other gatherings that we have in the downtown area, and just be in a bit more prominent location.
We also have the back half of the Pedway. Or Preway, or whatever it's called now,
Yeah.
which is very visible.
So anyways, I think this was a good discussion. So anyways, 3, maybe 4 locations, or do we want to take it out and set it
I-
off to the side?
I think that exploring the possibility of if the centralized location is a viable option, then I think we should take it and store it. I am very concerned about moving it and moving it again.
Yeah,
That's my concern.
yeah.
And I think the fact that if we take it out and store it with the plan and the publication of that's going in a centralized memorial location, I think that would appease the masses, 70%, because 30% aren't gonna like anything, so.
My only concern is right now, we don't have a blueprint or a path forward on that centralized location. It's just been a discussion item thus far. So
Well, and then we could put a timeline on it. If that's not something viable that happens in the next 18 months, then we will pull the public and place it back in Mingus Park.
okay.
But I don't think that we should place it somewhere, because then I think that if we move it again, 1, we're gonna risk it getting broken. And 2, then people are gonna be all pissy about it being not in that location again.
It shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be this hard, but unfortunately, I think it is. And even sitting here listening to all of you, I've learned even more. I've come to the point of agreeing it needs to be moved as infrequently as possible because of the construction of it and stuff. It would be, if it became broken, people would be very upset, I think. And so, and I hadn't even thought about the end of the Vietnam War. And so I think, I really like the idea of it being there through Memorial Day, and stuff, and having some kind of celebration. I like the idea of maybe a soft whatever saying, it's enough to be moved because of this and all the suggestions are really, really good. But I do worry now about it being moved. I like the idea of a centralized location for honoring our veterans, men and women that have served. But I think that that's not something that's going to happen very quickly because you're talking about I'm just thinking about the library is a bad example. I'm just thinking those things take a lot of time. And so if you want to put it in storage, I think there needs to be a plan B to realizing that we may have to place it out there
A
somewhere.
timeline that if it doesn't
Yeah.
occur, then we'll pull that. We'll do Jamie and then you. Okay, Jamie?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that Greg's idea of three places that the staff come up with to move it permanently, and not thinking about the centralized space. So that's one path, is just move it to a reasonable spot in the park, because that's where it originated, and maybe that would not ruffle any feathers, even if there is a centrally located spot. Some people will still see it visiting the park because it's a pedestrian place, unlike the place that Greg was talking about in North Bend. And there's a pedestrian place for this centralized discussed memorial park. So I don't see it being a problem being still in the park if we come up with 2 or 3 places that it will suffice and satisfy the public. What was the other thing I was going to say? I think that's it. It disappeared. I don't know where it went.
Thank you, Jamie.
So I can't, I'm sorry, go ahead. Please, sorry. I was just gonna say, I will say that, when we do move this, we're not gonna pick it up by the cross. We'll be excavating around it and picking it up from the base and moving it from the base, and supporting it through the whole process, not, just yanking it out of the ground. We'll make every effort to take and treat it gingerly as possible. Because we don't want to see it damaged at all. I mean, the staff that I have are great at that kind of work. And so I just wanted to share that, that I have every confidence that we can move this, as well as we can without damaging it. As long as it's structurally sound, which I believe that it is. I think it's been through enough over the years of weather and people touching it and probably people hitting it and people not
Bomb
liking
threat.
it and people in it. What's that?
Pipe bomb.
Pipe bombing it. I mean, it's seen its share of fun times. But I can see it both ways. I can see it placing it as an interim location inside the park. It's fine with us. I like the idea of pulling it out of the park. My only issue with that is, when we go to put it back in the park, if we have to, what does that look like? What kind of issues are we gonna have with that? But
And I would say that my only other issue with it being in an interim location is if it gets vandalized while it's there. I would hope that it would be much harder for someone to go into a memorial park that has a lot of memorials and do a lot of damage in that location versus in one-off, within the park. It has to be very visible and secure and things like that.
sure.
Although a lunatic went and cut down a whole bunch of trees down in California with an electric chainsaw and cut down like 18 street trees in a rampage this week. So you
Those
just don't know.
things do happen. Kurt, to answer your question, April 30th, 1975 was the official end of the Vietnam.
I Googled it too.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was just like, I have it on my Google page as well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and as far as the moving thing too, I'm no decision, don't make decisions anyways, right, at this thing, but again, things to consider. not only the frequency of the number of times we have to move, but, you know, if you move it and putting it in storage, you got to get it on a truck. You got to get it rattling down the road. You know, there's a lot of issues involved with moving it. I guess what I'm trying to say is there may be more risk in moving it to put it into storage than it might be to putting it into a temporary place. And particularly if, you know, the city staff has a pretty good idea about what might end up being a good permanent place anyways. So, but to leave that issue for a second, I do think it's a great idea that we reduce the policy for memorials and the parks to some kind of written agreement. I do like the idea of a lot of the plaques that are in the ground that were originally there that may cause problems for maintenance and other issues being moved to some kind of respectful location. And I like the idea about the benches as well. And our policy should, you know, some of these benches are donated by groups like JC is, for example. So, you know, if the bench falls apart, maybe they want to, if they want not just the plaque, but maybe they want to do the bench again. And then if there's something in the policy saying this is the kind of benches that we accept, and they're kind of all the same, then I think that would be a good thing as well. So,
Jamie?
Not to complicate the issue, but I would like to say that I totally agree with Kurt's comment on the plaque for the memorial, that it should include women. Somewhere down the line, just saying.
That it should what? I'm sorry.
We need to.
Include both sexes.
Oh, the plaque, yeah. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. Enough food for fodder?
What's that?
Enough food for fodder?
Yeah, I think so. So to just to kind of comment on benches. So we do have a standardized bench that we utilize, standardized plaque that we utilize. If somebody wants to donate a plaque and bench, so that's standardized and they're all set in concrete pad now versus freestanding in the, or just anchored into the earth, or even just a smaller concrete. So just wanted to share that with you as well. So we don't really give much of an option. We just say, this is the bench, and if you'd like to purchase it and donate it. you're more
And
than
then
welcome to.
I think taking it one step further, having a maintenance agreement saying that we will maintain this bench and plaque and concrete for 10 years. And then after that, if it's vandalized or damaged, then it's, so something, there's a billion entities that do this, so I'm sure
Yeah.
that there's.
And the good thing is that the benches that we do, I mean, we've had some of the benches that have been placed have been spray painted, wipes off easy. The plaques are brass, real difficult to vandalize. So wipes off easy. If it is painted, it's easy maintenance. So anyways, just wanted to share that with you. So, all right. 3
You want-
locations. Do we have them? Do we want to give them?
I think we'll start with the recommendations and then it'll be our discussion for Wednesday,
Do we want to
Tuesday,
bring
Thursday.
it to the regular
Yeah,
Parks
let's bring
Commission?
it to the regular Parks
right.
Commission meeting.
Okay,
And-
I'll make some recommendations and,
Okay, and I'll reach out to Kevin and see where he's at.
okay. Yeah,
I have to see him this week anyway. So.
nice. All right.
All right, any commissioner closing comments?
Just quickly, I've got a shameless promotion. We do have our farmer's market. It's been mentioned. We start next Wednesday.
Yeah, great.
So we invite everyone down. I think 9 o'clock the vendors will be setting up, and at 10 o'clock, we're actually going to do a kind of a parade from the highway up to the rest of Central. So that'll start at 10 o'clock if you want to participate in that.
Great.
Just every time I'm here, I'm learning so much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and serve Goose Bay. And yeah, it's always incredibly enlightening, and I look forward to what these conversations are going to lead to with memorials. This is fascinating.
since we're doing shameless plugs, the Coos Bay, the Friends of the Coos Bay Library have their book sale this weekend. Saturday for members, it starts at 9. For non-members, it's at 10 to 3 o'clock. Saturday is 12 to 3. And as many people that want to come up and buy some books would be great. So that's it.
So you don't have to put them away.
We do not throw away books.
I meant put them away, physically put them.
Yeah, so yes, because I am moving them Friday morning and whatever's left, I will help move back Sunday afternoon. Cricket even shows up once in a while to help with that. So.
You're perfect. Jamie?
Yes, I would like to reiterate what Coco said and invite any of you, including the Christines and Greg, to come help out at the May 17 Mayfly Festival. It's lots of fun, and you don't even have to come to the orientation that she mentioned. We will train you on the spot. 15 minutes, half an hour, we'd be happy to have you.
Thank you. All right. Staff closing? Good.
I have no comments. Thank you though, but I really do appreciate this robust conversation today. It
Okay.
was fantastic. Thank you.
Perfect. Good. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate everyone coming in today. Our community survives and thrives because of volunteers. So I appreciate especially our two guests today who are absolutely amazing. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. We're adjourned.